Welcome to the AC Report. I'm Christopher Ailes.
And I'm Mark Knupp.
And today we're going to just quickly introduce what the AC Report is going to be. So we're going to go over hot topics all the way from politics to Trump versus the media, to Trump versus North Korea, to Trump versus, I guess, everyone now.
Yeah, I mean, might as well just have it Trump versus the world, I guess.
Yeah, we're actually the Trump AC Report, no, I'm just kidding. So anyways, we're going to go over all political topics, and we're going to give the political facts as well as the historical facts, as well as kind of give
our personal opinions on it. Basically, we are going to aim to get into the politics, but also examine everything from a historical lens as opposed to just a simple political lens.
Yeah. And then when we have nothing to do with politics, we're actually going to have some fun with entertainment. You might see us live stream an NBA Finals game, you might see us live stream the Super Bowl, and then for the baseball fans out there, we might even do the World Series too. Alright, so we're going to actually talk about the North Korea and USA summit today because no one else is apparently. And we're going to discuss what our thoughts are and a little bit behind the history. So Mark, you want to start? What are your thoughts on the North Korea summit?
So I think what we're witnessing is a very historical moment. I mean, considering just last year, North Korea and the United States were on the verge of war. You had Trump and Kim Jong-un sitting there exchanging insults, threatening to blow each other up. And U.S. intelligence has found that North Korea does have in possession nuclear weapons. And so you have the entire Korean Peninsula which is on the verge of war. The whole world which is on the verge of another world war. And what you're seeing is a remarkable moment of, triumph, of peace and diplomacy, and, all of this can be credited to, Trump has done a phenomenal job. I mean, this is something that we've seen, only once before, and this was, back in 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Kennedy took a big diplomatic approach to everything, and Trump is doing the exact same thing.
And the thing is, you mentioned that Trump is really leading the way, and President Moon from South Korea even gave Trump credit, and so far we see that CNN, MSNBC, those fake news media people on Twitter that everyone loves to, retweet, they're all saying, no, it's not Trump. And then the North Korea's guy, he's like, yeah, it's not Trump either. Who are we believing? Are we believing our media? I mean, are we believing Trump? Are we believing South Korea, who's seriously saying, yeah, South Korea would not be safe if it wasn't for Trump? Or are we believing the guy, who has internment camps, starving his own people, where they have...
Getting rid of his own family members for power?
Exactly. Are we really believing this guy? I understand if you hate Trump, hey, he has an ego, some people don't like that. He goes off on Twitter like a 14-year-old girl. I mean, I understand.
Yeah,
can we at least give this guy credit?
I'm not a fan of Trump. I'll be flat out. I mean, he wasn't my first candidate, my first first person I voted for. But, I just like, if this was Obama, I'd give credit where credit is due, Trump has done, say what you want about him, but he has done something that, very few presidents have, been able to accomplish. And this is just something that you're witnessing history in the making here.
And it just blows my mind where we are today. Like, people are so anti-Trump that they almost want a nuclear war to happen. Just be like, we told you he'd do it. What is wrong with us?
Well, the main reason that is it's the media, like you said. It's the divide. There's the concept that the fourth estate, which is the media, basically cares all about the ratings and it cares about the money. And the easiest way they do that is by propping up outrageous stories and twisting truth.
Yep.
And what you have now is, one of those things that Americans need to understand is, as long as we are divided, and the media, as long as the media continues to divide us, those at the top, the ones who are in power, the greedy, corporate people, the ones who are in charge, they will continue to profit off of us. And, at one point, the more we're divided, it scares. If we're unified, it scares the establishment. And it's one of those things that, the media is a big proponent of that.
I agree completely. So I'm just curious on your thoughts. Like, do you actually think the summit will happen? It's been canceled and then it's happened again. I mean, June 12th is coming up. We are in June.
That's right. June 12th is not too far from now. And I think, honestly, it will happen. When Trump came out and announced in that letter to Kim Jong-un and the North Korean government that he was going to suspend the talks, you have to look at what happened. I mean, you look at what happened to Kim Jong-un and, the president of South Korea. They came together in a secret conference that was not talked about until afterwards at Panmunjom, and it was, it was a phenomenal moment because they're like, hey, if the U.S. even if the U.S. backs out, we still want to work for peace. So I think what you're seeing is, North Korea and South Korea finally realizing that, there's really not much of a difference. When Kim Jong-un first came across the South Korean border, in a speech, he said that we are one people, we are one culture, we are one country. And
sure, he says that now.
He says that now,
sure.
yes. I mean, he's a malcontent, and we don't know how malcontents can act in situations like this. But I will say, I do believe he's also facing a lot of pressure now from the outside community. And you got to look at, for example, all the what's the word I'm looking for? When President Trump sanctions.
Oh, yeah,
President
sanctions.
Trump instituted sanctions on North Korea, and China came in and is on Trump's side now, which is even more shocking.
Yeah.
And North Korea has no one to trade with,
Mm-hmm.
so they're hurting, and they realize that this is how you bring people to the table to discuss peace. This is how you bring a hermit kingdom, and now you're talking about Kim Jong-un wants Western stuff like McDonald's and stuff in North Korea, which is just unprecedented.
Oh yeah, it's amazing, and that's honestly what we talk about, like the Pax Americana, and just really, just assimilating countries too. I like to call it American ideas. It's really just a free market and capitalism. It's what Adam Smith and Milton Friedman always talked about. But when you see a country that was so communistic, so socialistic, and all of a sudden they get American ideas, and look at West Germany after World War II. East Germany, they were under Soviet control, which is of course communist control. We can discuss whether it's true communism or not later in another episode. And then you see the free market happen in West Germany, and it's really night and day. And it's night and day because the West Germany actually had electricity where East Germany didn't. But no, they had all the food. They had American businesses there. I think at one point West Germany had the third largest economy.
Mm-hmm.
After the war, and we know what happened in East Germany. They were risking their lives to come to West Germany.
Exactly. It's one of those things where you just have to look. It's North Korea is a perfect example. If you literally look at a satellite image of North Korea, the Korea Peninsula from space, literally you can see at night South Korea, a lot of lights. North Korea, except for where Pyongyang is, there's very little.
Yep.
And it's like you said, it's a testament. Look at the when the Berlin Wall divided Germany.
Mm-hmm.
You had Western Germany, which was this free, prosperous area, country, versus Eastern Germany, which was a depressing communist, bastion.
Mm-hmm. So I do want to talk about that a little bit because I like where we're going with this West Germany and East Germany versus the North Korea South Korea thing, because there's so many similarities there and so many analogies there. Now, how many people do you think are wearing Magma hats right now who had the Reagan 2.0 shirts just going, "We told you"?
Probably a lot. Probably half of the audience, a good portion.
Because we talked about this. I'm a Ted Cruz guy. By the way, for those who don't know me, I'm very libertarian and also some conservative because I like a big military. You're pretty conservative and...
pretty much about conservative, fiscally conservative, moderately socially moderate.
Yeah.
Slightly socially liberal than most people.
Yeah. So... we're definitely not those hardcore right-wing people that the
Reaganites.
The Reaganites. While I do love Reagan, we gotta give Trump credit. We thought this whole being angry with everyone and wanting to fight everyone would not work. We've just, maybe it's because we're so used to Obama apologizing to everyone.
Well, I'll be the first to admit that when it came to, when Trump came out and announced all his, his actions, his words against, Kim Jong-un, where he sat there in the United Nations to call Kim Jong-un Rocket Man in front of not just the entire world, but in front of the actual North Korean delegation, I sat there and I thought to myself, I told my parents, this will not work. This is just going to lead us into violence. It's going to lead us into another war, a world war, and we might not survive that. But I will be the first to admit that, boy, was I wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Because, and we'll be able to see that after June 12th. I've actually seen articles and read articles and seen videos from news stations, BBC specifically, BBC World News over in Singapore, that they're gearing up. They have drinks named after Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un now. And the big message of that is when everything's said and done and the conference is finished, there's going to be a strong possibility of actually toasting to a new era of peace.
So you mentioned Rocket Man, and this is actually a buddy of mine. He asked me this the other day. We were in a history class, and he said, "Hey, do you think Rocket Man is going to be Trump's version of what Reagan said of Gorbachev tear down that wall?" And back then, I thought he was literally just joking with me. I fell over laughing. I thought it was hilarious. Now, You know, as ridiculous as this sounds, it really is going to be that way. The moment when he said Rocket Man and we really got into this serious battle, because remember, CNN, they're like, oh, now we're going to nuclear war, it's going to be MAD. For those who don't know, MAD, it's mutually assured destruction, it's a Soviet USA term. It's going to be MAD, and it's going to be all this, it's going to be, like you said, World War III, people thought, and all of a sudden he goes, yeah, we don't actually have the missiles to compete with the, you know, country with the biggest army. And it's like, oh, this is why we increase our military spending. This is why we protect the free world. I mean,
you bring up Reagan and Gorbachev and their relationship and, you know, what they said to each other and compare that to Trump and Kim Jong-un, and you have to look and realize that at the end, right after the wall came down and leading up to the wall coming down, Reagan and Gorbachev actually became really good friends. You know, in the last days of his presidency, Reagan credited Gorbachev as being, you know, someone who actually wanted to, you know, sit down and come to the table and, you know, talk about that. And, you know, I think it's important to note that in today's world, you know, we see, you know, we have political violence, we have political, you know, we're being divided politically, and, you know, we have countries that hate each other. You know, just look at the conflicts going on in the Middle East right now. You know, and, you know, but I think it's important to realize that at the end of the day, you know, none of us really want war. Because war should be a last resort.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think, you know, cases like with Gorbachev and Reagan and Kim Jong-un and Trump are shining moments. I mean, when I was watching the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, and you saw the South Korean and North Korean teams could combine into one team, and you saw the South Korean president and the Kim Jong-un's sister as a North Korean delegation shake hands, I mean, that was a powerful moment for me, because it makes you realize that if people like that who have such a strong rivalry on a national level can come together and work things out, then politically we can do the same thing here at home. You know, we don't have to be divided anymore. And I think that is why, you know, I think that's why a lot of the media is not covering, you know, the unity about it.
Yeah, I agree completely.
You know, because, you know, again, it's that message of unity.
Yeah.
And unity scares people.
I mean, love doesn't sell. I mean, we can even look at USA history. Martin Luther King did not sell until he put people in Alabama, where the Dixiecrats were, and they were getting fire hosed. It wasn't until a violent thing occurred where they would sell love. Same thing with Buddha in West India, right? With the British. I mean, that really didn't sell.
Muhammad Gandhi,
Yeah, Gandhi, sorry, not Buddha, my bad. Gandhi, it didn't sell until the British really were attacking them, and then all of a sudden, as soon as it broke away, it was kind of, you know, no one really talks about that, you know?
Right.
I mean, it's just...
again, you know, like you said, violence sells. I mean, look at our media, look at our culture today. I mean, you have video games glorifying violence. You have songs in the media that, you know, songs that talk about, you know, raping women, you know, and drugging people and stuff like that. Yeah, it's the rap music, but you know, nothing against rappers. I mean, I do like rap music myself.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna.
I grew up listening to Eazy-E. I'm not dumb. I understood.
Eazy-E, NWA. The old school. That's what I like. The old school.
Yeah.
But you know, you have a culture that glorifies sex, violence, and all that, and you know that stuff sells. And I hate to say it, but it does, and it's unfortunate.
Oh, I mean, look at Samantha Bee. I mean, she says. I'm not going to say it on air, but she says the C word, and then all of a sudden, you know, what if a Republican, by the way, would said that, fired. Like, her career is over. She says it against a Republican, and all of a sudden, oh, it's for feminism. What? What? I can't. No, that's wrong.
It's a double standard.
Oh, man.
But you look at what's going on in North and South Korea, and Kim Jong-un mentioned in his, you know, it's believed that he has mentioned that he wants to see a unified, they both want a unified Korea.
Yeah.
Now, that's obviously going to be a very difficult process because you have one, you know, that depends is Kim Jong-un willing to give up his power.
That.
Versus, you know, if he is willing to step down and give up total power but still have a main role in the government, then what you could see is the possibility of either, you know, the South Korean president as the president of the new Korea, and then you have Kim Jong-un who could be the vice president or something like that. Yeah. Something along those lines. That's what you're going to have to see. It's going to be really difficult to do.
I even think with something like that, we could just give Kim Jong-un like a little title that does nothing. Just a pat him on the back, because he has such a big ego. He really does. And
yeah,
I mean,
well, some would argue Trump has the same ego too. So Not to the extent that he's, you know.
I agree. Trump has a big ego. I think ego is amoral. Like Abraham Lincoln had just to use history, Abraham Lincoln had the biggest ego ever. He said, "Hey South, we don't really need you," and then just to kind of prove a point, and then of course that happened, and that worked well. Whereas Hitler had a giant ego as well, and he used that for horrific things. Ego is amoral. I think Trump is right now a good guy. I really do.
I think he is too. I think I question. I have concerns with some of the stuff he says, but I do think his intentions are pure, and he's done a lot so far.
Yeah.
And I dare say that if if this ends up being peace between North and South Korea permanently, and they've in the war and all that stuff, then Trump more than willing deserves the Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize for this, because this is truly what peace is about.
I agree. I mean, once again, it's kind of what we started off with this segment with. If the South Korean president says you deserve it because this would not have happened without you, and then Americans, the people in the military are saying this is all because of him, but one guy in North Korea says he doesn't deserve it, who are you going to believe? And I think if who you believe really says a lot about you. And once again, we talk about this all the time. Like, I get if you hate Trump, I really do. If you don't like his Twitter, it's annoying. Trust me, Republicans hate his Twitter, by the way, more than Democrats. Because we just want to talk about policy. That's all Republicans want to do is talk about policy.
Oh yeah,
most Republicans don't.
His Twitter is, a lot of Republicans don't agree with it, and I especially don't. I don't think, exchanging childish insults on Twitter
does
nothing. It distracts. It makes you look like a middle schooler.
Yeah, it distracts because instead we can't talk about the booming economy because you just gave CNN a little thing. Exactly. Because you just said the Rocket Man, and all of a sudden instead of talking about black unemployment rate being the lowest ever, all of a sudden we're talking about some stupid Twitter war. Yeah, some stupid Twitter war. It's ridiculous what we're doing this year. But it's what we always say. I really feel like they want America to fail because they hate Trump this much.
They do.
And it's the same thing happened under Bush, though. Like, we're not that young because we remember what it was like under Bush. Bush went for the same thing. He was called a Nazi. He was called a dictator. By the way, if you don't understand why that's hilarious to Republicans, conservatives mainly, conservatives want a smaller government. Hitler wanted all the government power in the world. It's literally complete ends of the spectrum. Like, if you look at the actual policy, they're nothing alike. They're nothing alike. It makes no sense.
No, it does not, and that's one of the common misconceptions. When people sit there and say, Republicans are Nazis and all that, no, we're not. We don't want if you look at the Nazi ideology, it's terrible. It's it's a master race. It's big government control. Mm-hmm. It's there's only one ruler. There's one Hitler himself. He told everyone to literally declare one Führer. Mm-hmm. The whole, just look at the motto for Nazi Germany was, one Reich, one nation, one Führer, mm-hmm. one empire, one nation, one Führer. And it's one of those things where you just have to, it pains me to have people call me, just because I'm a conservative, not necessarily a Republican, but a conservative, and call me, a Nazi.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I'm just like, you're absolutely wrong. My ancestors fought the Nazis. A lot of our ancestors fought the Nazis, and it pains me to say that, to hear people say that to me. And it's just one of those things that just, it blows my mind because it's a lack of history. Yeah. It's a lack of knowledge of history.
It really is. And the thing is, especially, that's why I can't stand public education, man. It's because they use one little fact, and it was the Nazis were nationalists. And then they turned nationalism into Nazism, which is not true at all. Like, that was one little thing for the Nazis. They were National Socialists, they were for centralized government. Mm-hmm. They were for, they literally had something called the Operations of the 4-Year Plan, right? That was Göring saying? Yeah, the Operation of the 4-Year Plan,
Well, it's important to realize that at the very beginning, when, in the early 20s, and I think it was like 1924, 25, mm-hmm. when Hitler first, after Hitler tried to overthrow the government the first time, he realized violence wasn't the answer, so he sat there and he adopted a new ideology. And at the beginning, his ideology was, and I will say this, it's actually true, his ideology was, at the very beginning, nationalist. Mm-hmm. He was about, Germany is the supreme, Germany is the supreme country. And that's where, when I talk to people on the left who sit there and say that, we're Nazi and everything, and say that, you have people, it annoys me because it's not true. Like, and I will agree, I will say this, I do think that some of the people who, some of them are right when they sit there and say that there is such thing as becoming too nationalistic.
Yeah, of course.
And that is, once we become too nationalistic to where we think that, not only is America, America is the greatest nation in the world, in my honest opinion. But once you get to the point where it should be the only nation in the world, which is what Hitler wanted.
Yeah.
That, for Germany, that's when you cross that line into radical nationalism.
And I think when you talk about radical nationalism, that's where you get the Richard Spencers. And as you see, like, no conservative wants that.
Oh, no.
I mean, Richard Spencer's a big Trump fan for some reason, which makes no sense because besides the nationality, like, they have nothing else in common. I mean, Richard Spencer is a legit racist. And every other conservative, like Ben Shapiro, Ted Cruz, even Crowder, there's a reason why we make fun of this guy. He is not. No, I do not want to be associated with him.
Oh no, because people like Richard Spencer are a danger to not just this country, but are a danger to us, to the conservative mindset, because they corrupt it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they're like, once again, we'll talk about this on another episode of podcast because I wanted to get back to North Korea. Mm-hmm. But we always talk about freedom of speech. And, you get a guy like Richard Spencer who's like, oh, he says something completely racist, and he goes, I'm just using my, freedom of speech, yay, conservatives. And it's like, no, dude, like, we like freedom of speech because we don't want you to use a slippery slope where you say, hate speech isn't allowed, and then you say, oh, you can't say USA is awesome, that's hate speech. That's what we mean.
Right.
We're not saying we want you to go out there and say, black people are unequal, because that's horrible. All of us are equal. There's a reason why we discuss the founding fathers so much is because we believe in what they said. All men are created equal. It's written
in the core it's written in the core of the Declaration of Independence. It's literally right there in there that all men are created equal. All people are created equal.
I mean, the Constitution's awesome. It's why Abraham Lincoln even credits, especially Thomas Jefferson, all the time about, hey, what they did back then in 1776 is why we can do what we did now. And he was referring to freeing all slaves. I mean,
right.
If he can give the credit, I can do it too.
Well, and that's something else I would gladly like to go into in a later podcast. But what a lot of people don't realize is when Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence in 1776, a lot of people don't realize is that he originally advocated for, he wrote in there that, slaves were to be free. Mm-hmm. And, but, there were wealthy plantation owners in the South at the time, back in 1776, who were like, well, no, that's vital to the American economy, so they don't want to, so they wrote it out. They forced him to write it out. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of people sit there and criticize Jefferson, but you don't realize that he was actually one of the earliest proponents of abolition. Mm-hmm. Before it became popular.
I like where we're going with this. We're going away from North Korea and we're going on to our next topic. Our next topic is actually going to be about what happened right now. What was it, George Washington University?
Yes.
We're going to talk about that next right after.
So, quick correction in the last part of the broadcast. He mentioned that the Declaration of the Constitution of the United States was written in 1776. Actually, that was written in 1789. The Declaration of Independence was written in 1776.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, yeah, as you can tell, we really care about the facts here. That's my bad. Alright, moving on though to the George Washington University. They want to get rid of their mascot, which is actually just George Washington in the colonial version, right?
Yeah,
which
colonial
is just
garb.
George Washington.
Yeah, which is just still Washington.
Yeah.
I don't think of a time whenever he was colonial, when he wasn't colonial.
Yeah, but anyways, I mean, the biggest reason why they want to get rid of him, if you ask the students, is they say the buzzwords. He's imperialistic, which is hilarious because the whole point of the American Revolution was to get rid of the biggest imperialistic nation in history.
And the funny thing about that is, it really shows a lack of history because they don't realize that George Washington never presided over American expansion. The first president to ever preside over American expansion was Jefferson with the Louisiana Purchase. I mean, if you're gonna even though he's not, if you're gonna call anyone imperialist, just call Jefferson that. I mean, he's not really an imperialist, but
yeah. I mean, buying land. I mean, that's the least damaging way to be imperialist.
Then again, you gotta remember Napoleon was like, I'm broke. I need money. Buy this land.
That's really true. Oh man, Napoleon, it was either money or winters, and that was his downfall.
Yeah.
But anyways, going back to the George Washington thing, I mean, this is what's going on in the world right now. We're so offended by our founding fathers because the media tells us to be, and they have no idea what our founding fathers were about. I mean, that's the only reason why I'd be offended. I mean, people were calling Abraham Lincoln racist. They just tore down, was it tore down or spray paint his statue? I always forget.
I think it's spray painted.
Spray paint. I mean, they did something with the statue, and I mean that's ridiculous. They're calling the guy who freed the slaves racist.
And it's not just you know, I don't bring attention to this as well. It's not just people on the left who are calling Lincoln a racist when he's. You have people on the right who are calling Lincoln, you know, an imperialist, a warmonger and everything. And you know, I don't necessarily have an opinion on that one way or the other, but I think it's fair that I don't think it's fair that you just say that, because you don't know what today's world, we don't know what it's like to live on the cusp of a civil war. And I hope to God we never will.
I don't think so. I mean, there's one side that wants, the government to have guns and to get rid of them of the citizens' hands, and then the other side wants citizens to have guns. If we really choose who's going to win that war, the side with guns or no guns. I mean, it's going to be a quick civil war.
Very cool.
At least back in the day, I mean, while they were horrific, at least the leaders in the South were horrifically racist. Like, I mean, at least they understood the Constitution a little bit. At least the Second Amendment. They didn't really understand the Constitution too well because they thought not everyone was equal. But
right.
It's ridiculous. Also, that's the next thing we can talk about. How great the Constitution is. People legitimately think about Thomas Jefferson. And I know you have that great fact about Thomas Jefferson with the Constitution, about how he wanted to write Declaration. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so Thomas Jefferson wrote, originally when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, he was part of a committee. It was him, Benjamin Franklin from Philadelphia, and John Adams. And the three of them were the committee to write it. And Jefferson spent the entire night writing the document and all that stuff, and then he's presented it to Franklin and them. And Franklin and Adams liked a lot of what it was, liked it a lot, but they changed, as most people do, they changed words around, and then they told Franklin, actually, it was Ben Franklin who told Jefferson to take out the thing about the slaves, because he realized that if you want to because back then, you have to understand, the South was the hardest, especially South Carolina, were the hardest, colonies to get on board with independence, because a lot of them had a lot of, gave a lot of money to got a lot of money from the crown, had a lot of trading for the crown, so they were terrified. So Franklin realized, unfortunately, that slavery at the time was a part of the economy. It's terrible that it was, but that's just the circumstances of the age. Yeah. And what happened was Thomas Jefferson was not happy about it, but did it anyway. And they rewrote the Declaration of Independence to basically he took that part about the slaves out. And the entire, interesting to note, the entire Congress, all the colonies voted to ratify it except for one, New York, actually. The colony of New York abstained from voting because their constituent assembly didn't get back to them, probably because they were taken over by the British at the time.
No big deal.
No big deal. But yeah, no.
I really want to focus on the founding fathers, and I don't want to jump into the Civil War conversation because that's a 4-hour episode at least in itself. I want to talk about the Confederate statues part, because that's where it gets controversial. Because now we're not talking about USA statues of Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln. We're talking about people who did technically succeed. And then I know we had that law, I forget the year, but we had the law where they said, Confederate soldiers were also American soldiers back in the day. But I mean, let's talk about it. Like, what do we want to do with the Confederate statues? I don't want to get rid of them. I disagree with that. But my opinion, I'd put them in historical museums.
And I'm the same way. I mean, I agree with the sentiment of a lot of people, and a lot of you out here who are watching this might feel the same way. And I want you to know, I agree with you. I believe, contrary to what some people on the far right on the far conservative spectrum will say, I agree with you. The South, the whole Confederacy was, it had its moments where, the racism and the slavery, and it was god awful, and it was a terrible thing. But what you have to realize is you can't, erase history.
Yep.
And those who erase history, those who fail to understand history, are doomed to repeat it.
Yep.
And
Great quote.
It's one of those things where, there was a long conversation in Germany right now. You can't. Last I checked, you can't say Nazi. You can't reference.
No.
I might be wrong on this, but last I heard it was that you can't sit there and bring up the instances of World War II and Nazi Germany and all that stuff. It's banned because they want to remove the history.
I do believe they want to teach that Nazis happened, I believe that they're not trying to erase it completely and do what
I would hope not.
and not do what Russia does and say, oh, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, that didn't happen, that wasn't like they don't want to do that, but they do want to get rid of statues, and they want to get rid of that. And the thing is, as soon as you get rid of those horrific statues, and that's what they are, they're horrific statues of a horrific time. All of a sudden, generations from now, I'm like, oh, what's a Nazi? Oh, it's something in the history book. It's not that big of a deal anymore.
And it's important to realize also that when it comes to Confederate monuments, a lot of people assume, and this is something we'll talk about in another podcast as well, but a lot of people assume that every general who fought for the Confederacy was a slave owner. That's not true. Thomas Stonewall Jackson, one of the most brilliant military commanders during that time. He was really religious. He was a big proponent of freedom. He hated slavery. Mm-hmm. Robert E. Lee. When Robert E. Lee was a lot of people want to take Robert E. Lee's statue down because they believe that he was a slave. He loved slaves. No. In fact, when he asked about why he fought for the South in an interview, he said, I fought for the South because I could not fight against my home. And his home was Virginia. So you have to sit there and reason. And when, after segregation, after the war was over, and of course as in the North, during Reconstruction, segregation was over, slavery was over, and all that. There was a story where a black man in Virginia went up to an altar to pray for communion, to take back communion at a Baptist church, and a white man old white man knelt down next to him and drank from the same cup and took a piece of bread from the same bowl. And a lot of people were wondering who that guy. That man was Robert E. Lee, and this is something you can feel free to look up, but it's the absolute truth. Robert E. Lee was not a slave owner. He was not, he hated slavery. Yeah. And so that's why I think it's wrong to take down all the Confederate statues without realizing, the history behind it.
Yeah, the true history.
Like a lot of the political statues, like like Jefferson Davis and all that stuff, those were, they were bent on, slavery and keeping, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of the generals didn't fight because of slavery. They fought because of...
It was their home.
It's their homeland.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of you would go out and, if this country, God forbid, split up, how many of you would go fight for your home state? I mean, anyone of us would.
I mean, we're in Orlando, which is a very liberal, or at least leftward-leaning city, and so if, God forbid, that ever happened, I mean, there's no way that the majority would agree with us.
No.
But you best believe I'm going to stick up for Orlando. That's where I was born and raised. I mean, of course, America first, but I would try to have those America first policies here.
Yeah.
But also a big issue that comes with the Confederate statues and the flags is the way we teach history so much. People now think the Confederate flag is just Southern pride. No one, I'm not going to say no one because that's an absolute, but most people who fly the Confederate flag in 2018 are not racist.
No.
I mean, you now have African Americans who wave the Confederate flag because they're from Kentucky or because they're from Alabama. It's what Southern people, do. Whether that's unfortunate, fortunate, it's up to you. I don't really have a strong opinion on that. But I mean, we even had the Confederate flag on some of our tanks in World War II when they were freeing and liberating France. From Nazi Germany. At this point, it doesn't. At least in modern world, in my opinion, it doesn't mean what it means anymore. What it used to mean.
You got to understand that a lot of people sit there and talk about the Confederate flag being racist and all that, being a symbol of racism and all that stuff. And if you think that's a symbol of racism, then if you want to, then the American flag, the stars and stripes, that is a symbol of racism, a symbol of division and all that, because we flew the Betsy Ross flag, the original flag with the 13 stars during the Revolution, when we were seceding, from becoming independent from the mother country, from a country. And so if you're going to sit there and call the Confederate flag divisive and all that stuff, then you better stand around and say the same thing about the American flag, because it's the same thing.
The issue with that, though, is people want to do that. This is why we talked about George Washington University. You have people who are protesting the anthem because it's racist now. You have people openly burning and stepping on the flag now. People just don't understand what America is really about. Because, unfortunately, they hear CNN and they hear liberal professors at the colleges where they spend this big money talking about how racist Thomas Jefferson was and all this, and they see plays like Hamilton, which have very little historical accuracies, where they think Thomas Jefferson was just hanging out with slaves the whole time.
The music's pretty good though. I'm not gonna lie. The music's pretty good. I listen to it.
Lin-Manuel Miranda, he's a great writer.
Agreed.
I mean, I would not disagree with that.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good musical, yeah. But no, you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where you have to just sit there and look at, we can't erase our history. As bad and as painful as our history is, it's still our history. It's what makes us who we are, and it's how we learn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't agree with the Confederate flag in any case, and I will never support it. I will never support flying it for whatever, whether it's heritage or not. I just disagree with it. But the reason why I won't sit there and demand that people take it down is because, to me, as someone who loves history, it's a reminder. It's a reminder of our sins. It's a reminder of what where we went wrong, and it's a reminder to be better than our ancestors, to be better than better than we are now.
And I think we agree on this. I think that's why we're the greatest country ever, is because we had several mistakes. I mean, slavery did happen here. No one's ever going to deny that, hopefully. I mean, we've done horrible things. We've done the Trail of Tears. We've done horrific things. We put the Japanese Americans in
internment camps, unfortunately.
We've done horrific things. But we have to remind ourselves to keep making sure we live up to what our founding fathers wanted, that everyone is equal and has the same opportunity. I mean, that's why we support capitalism so much, is because, and it's a big conservative thing, we want to make sure everyone at the beginning, at that starting line, is equal. Now, whether you end up as Bill Gates or you end up at, as a McDonald's store manager, or whatever it may be, I mean, that's up to you. We don't want to control that, because that's the good and bad part about freedom.
Well, the thing about a capitalist society is, in a capitalist society, you can go as far as you want to go. If you want to stop at being a general manager of a McDonald's for the rest of your life, you can do that in a capitalism. That's fine. It's okay. You can do what you want as long as you're making a good enough paycheck to pay for your family and all that stuff. That's fine. But if you want to go more than that, if you want to go from working at McDonald's as a store manager at McDonald's to working in corporate, or one day rising up into higher ranks of CEO, CFO, or something like that, then you can do that as well. That's what a capitalist society is about. It's
exactly.
A lot of people sit there and say it's greedy and it's monetary based and all that stuff. And in some cases, unfortunately, that is a negative aspect of it. A majority of capitalism is you're free to go as far. The only person who can stop you is yourself. The sky's the limit. And whereas in a socialist society, it doesn't matter if you want to go. You can sit there and work in a factory all your life in a socialist society or a communist society. But if you sit there and you're like, well, I want to do more than work in a factory. I want to help build factory. I want to manage factory. I want all stuff. You're good. Because the government could be like, well, you're good at working in a factory, and that's where we want you to stay. We don't care. That's what you have to do.
It was. It goes back to Gulf's plan, which was the Soviet plan, economic plan. And when you're born, you're not born, for me, like Christopher Ailes, be whatever you want. You're born as, okay, this is going to be our 15th engineer in this building, or our 15th servant worker in this building. That's how centralized that system really is, and that's disturbing. It doesn't allow people to be great, the reason why we have those Apple, the Amazons, and all that is because Chick-fil-A, and the reason why we have all that is because we didn't make their CEOs into engineers when they're clearly not engineers, or we didn't make them into, hey, we need another doctor, you're going to be a doctor in this district. That's the reason why we're such a great nation, at least economically. I hope we can all agree on that.
Right. Yeah. Right. Agreed. Yeah. No. And it's again, it all comes back to, and I will say this, there are negative aspects of capitalism.
Oh, of course.
To me, a monopoly is a negative aspect of capitalism, because there's no market. Yeah. There's no free market there. However, capitalism has done a lot more good for the world than communism, and definitely than socialism. Definitely. I mean, look what's going on in Venezuela. God forbid those people, God help those people. Yeah. I mean, you're standing out in bread lines, people are starving, and it's ridiculous.
I mean, I'll even use Europe. Could they really be socialist if they had the army that we had, where they had to protect the free world? There's no way.
No.
There's no way. And I mean, look at their socialized healthcare. UK just had to kill a baby just because it wasn't within within their plan of socialized medicine.
Right. Again, you talk about socialized medicine, and again, something else we can talk about in another podcast later on. But just real quickly, I don't know, just in case people out there want to understand, and if America were to adopt a socialized medicine, this means basically if you're 55 and older, the government will not treat you. And that is why, and the reason why is, why should the government spend its money to treat someone who's 55 and older, who's old, older, who's old age, who is getting ready to retire and all that stuff? Why should they treat you for any medical conditions when they can treat younger people who can still work, who will still work and contribute to the economy and all that stuff?
Exactly.
And that's where it's wrong, because I see there's a lot of older people who advocate for for a socialized medicine, and I'm like, you don't realize what's going to happen if you do that. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So you have to realize that. I mean, look what happened with, again, like you said, in the UK with baby Alfie. It's tragic what happened.
It's disgusting.
I mean, and it makes me, I will say, it makes me glad that Trump just recently signed the Right to Try law.
Yeah.
Which basically allows if a terminally ill patient it has the right to determine, without whether the doctor says yes or no, whatever, it's that patient's right to try an experimental drug that could save their life.
Yep.
Now, is it possible the drug could kill them? Yes, of course, it's an experimental drug, but they're terminally ill. And a lot of them will tell you, if I'm gonna die, at least let me die trying to save myself.
Yep.
I mean, self-preservation at its finest.
Exactly.
So,
Alright, man. I think that's everything we have to say today. Thank you guys for tuning in to the very first episode of the AAC Report. I've been Christopher Ailes.
I'm Mark Canal.
Have a great day.